there. There.
Who's on the mission?
Oh, Scott Green.
Scott Green.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's a security guy up on Deseret. That's right. We got chatting about Scott Green. That's right.
So did I damage him too bad?
Yeah, all good.
Oh, good. Good. He turned out good despite.
All positive. He's a nice guy.
Yeah, he's great. He was over the Case Creek Irrigation Company
Yes, he was.
for many, many years. The
So
Greens
he was in Texas with him, huh?
yeah, oh yeah, North Texas North is what it was. There were only two missions. But, yeah.
She can't go now. She's only going to keep us in line.
Like your hands full now, Stephanie.
So
Keep us online.
I was reading in the paper that they've abandoned the nuclear.
Yes.
Oh, yeah,
You notice that?
I'd like to hear about a little bit about that, Ty, when the time's right, or now.
On the administrative updates.
Okay. You can't leave early this time.
Well,
You'll miss it.
Yeah, yeah.
that will be exciting.
Just hurry up. Huh? Whoops.
That's an awful sound. That's a horrible sound.
Yeah, my bad. Sorry.
Yeah, I hate that sound.
Let's see what we can do to quiet that, huh?
At the same time, I think the IPA battle's heating up on the Hill too. I heard from the attorneys today.
Yeah, they have a draft
Bill, yeah.
submitted to redo take over the control
And
of the legislature.
hijack the board.
But they know best.
They're divinely appointed.
Well,
It
Yeah.
really is quite, yeah,
It's
there's a,
amazing.
it really is. I mean, that,
Yeah.
it kind of really almost goes to their heads, don't it? I mean, that.
So
I think these tensions are really just too much misunderstanding. So what they're
We'll go green here. Okay, let's call to order the work meeting. Oregon City Council, November 14th, 2023. On the agenda is a discussion concerning short and long-term rentals, business licenses, consolidated fee schedule ordinances. Stephanie, glad to have you here tonight. We're going to turn some time over to Stephanie. Stephanie has been, and if I misspeak here, Stephanie, correct me, but she's been spending a lot of time looking at other cities and looking at their short and long-term rental ordinances, their ADUs, some of their fees. And I think that the one city she focused in on a little is Hurricane City. And apparently Hurricane City, of course, is a little different than Morgan City. They probably deal with, Airbnbs, VRBOs, and that a lot more than we do. But apparently they've have an ordinance in place, and then it's a work in progress. And so they'll see they need to make some changes. So they make some changes, and then they'll see they need to make some more changes. So I think they've gone down this road now for the last few years. So maybe we can benefit from Hurricane's experiences. So as we take a look at putting something in place here in Morgan City. So Stephanie, I will just turn the time over to you and let you discuss what you found out.
Okay, so what I had Denise send out the item 1, that was everything from the combined meeting that we had talked about possibly wanting to include, or just things that we wanted to look at as a city if we were going to regulate rentals. Then item 2, as Tony said, that I kind of focused in on Hurricane City. They've been, in other words, bombarded with these short-term vacation rentals, VRBO, Airbnb. And so for the last few years, they have updated their code every 5 to 6 months, because it seems like that what they had said is they'd write something and somebody would find a loophole. Then they'd fix it, and then somewhere else in the code, somebody else would find another loophole. And so they've just kind of been through this process and kind of solidified what their code is now. I did include the link for the whole code, but when we had the combined meeting, it was kind of discussed that we didn't want to do it through planning, and it was going to be more through business licensing and code enforcement. So I went through and I took out all of the planning aspects of their code just to simplify it for us to read through it. But what's in there, I think, is all good stuff. If we want to regulate rentals, this gives us a little bit of meat to help enforce the code. So pretty much I've kind of found all the information, and now I'm turning it over to you guys to see how far you want to take it, how much you want to enforce, if you want to enforce, how you want to regulate, and then we'll go from there.
Okay, so in your package, you see that she's mentioned, she says, please review to see if you want to include any of the following. And then, of course, it goes into a list of items. I don't know if anyone's had an opportunity to peruse through it, look at it, but let's open it up for discussion.
I'd have some comments even,
Yeah.
maybe before getting to that. So Stephanie, we met with the, and I think you were there too, met with the Planning Commission here a month or so ago. But let me just bring forth some of the, I guess I'm seeing a division here that I'd like to try to bring back together and reconcile. Let me just bring forward some of the, some comments that were made from the minutes of that meeting. Jake Young started out by saying we had 3 options. A was to continue as the city currently was by not doing anything to regulate short-term rentals. B, an ordinance which regulated rentals and allowed them, and C, then an ordinance which regulated rentals by not allowing them. So, and there was, quite a bit of discussion. We can go back to the minutes and look at them, but a couple of highlights that I think kind of provided some of the direction that we were headed at that time. Gary Crane mentioned option A, which was pointed out earlier, and said that a lot of cities weren't doing anything about short-term rentals right now since they weren't a big enough problem. He said the city could regulate them through the nuisance noise ordinance, i.e. parking in front of mailboxes, parking on streets during the winter months, noise from a party and so forth. Gary asked if there was a reason to regulate short-term rentals. He mentioned the cost of regulating and enforcing the ordinance. In fact, we had looked at, in some of the information you had provided earlier, Stephanie, the Garden City ordinance, and as they put it in place, they had some costs there, and within a year, it seemed like their costs it seemed like they had tripled just for the enforcement of it. Then lastly, as we kind of got towards the end of the meeting, consensus of the council was to work on amending the nuisance and business license ordinances. Okay, so let me underscore that, amending the nuisance and business license ordinances to regulate the short-term rentals and provide for effective code enforcement. Suggestion was made to mirror the county's process regarding a business license. Discussion regarding the current situation with the city and the need to tighten up city nuisance and parking ordinance. Ty mentioned he would work with Roe and bring back a proposal to the council of amendments to the city code. And maybe that's part of what this is here. Roe stated changing the timeframe on code enforcement will not be very helpful. And I go back to Layton City, and that's kind of what I hung my hat on. Layton City doesn't have a short-term rental code per se, and it and yet quite a bit bigger city than Morgan for sure. And I can appreciate if there's a difference between recreation and maybe not. So I think that's maybe one element. How big is Morgan in that regard? And maybe there's more discussion and to revisit it. But in my mind, we took the approach or took the road that we'd look at regulation through existing ordinances. Roe had some examples of problems that he had, but when the day was done, they really weren't necessarily short-term rental problems per se, but problems that could be taken care of via just maybe a strengthening. Some of it were timing issues. I know he was concerned about strengthening our existing ordinances. So I guess I'm questioning, are we going down the road of a short-term rental ordinance and I think we need to make that decision first. Are we going down a road of just working with our existing ordinances? So maybe I'd throw that out for some discussion.
Want me to
Ty'd be a good one to address that.
respond? Well, you mentioned my name, so.
Yeah.
No, it's both. So the you're right. Part of what this does is it follows up on that discussion where we said if we did anything at all, it would be through business licenses. And there was, after the meeting even, we're like, what did we decide? Because it wasn't an action item, it was just discussion.
Yeah.
And so part of what we're bringing back is if there's any, if we explore this bit, how it would work under business licenses, then it's easier to enforce. So on the enforcement side, it's much easier to have some teeth if you revoke a business license and you require a business license. If we do strictly, like we said, the nuisance ordinance, one of the things it doesn't do is define what activity it is. So it's just strictly nuisance, but nuisance ordinance would not define the difference between a bed and breakfast or a renting out part of the house. And so that's kind of what this is it's both. It's if we do a business license, identify what it is, give a path forward for permitting, then it still can't be a nuisance, right? But the property and the issue that we were talking about is pretty much untouchable with nuisance, because it doesn't address renting out a room or a couch or anything of that nature. So we still need to update, right, the nuisance ordinance. But when we left, and we also left with, if we do anything else through business license. So we're starting there and just seeing same thing. If there's not an appetite, or we do bring back, here's how we see it working under business license. So we didn't take it back to planning commission. We got out of the land use discussion. Stephanie's done some homework just to say, you know, administratively, we don't feel like it's that big of a burden to do it through business licenses. We have auto renewal, it's online. It puts the onus on the people engaging in short-term rentals, you know, to come and say, I'm a short-term rental. And then we have a lot more say if it's what type of short-term rental are you? Looking at occupancy and fire code, and it goes a little beyond the nuisance.
Yeah, so how is that not a short-term rental ordinance then? If-
No, it could be. That's what we're saying is, but I don't know that in that meeting, we decided not to do short-term rental.
I think we decided not to go down an ordinance road. I mean, that was my take on it.
No, right at the end of the meeting, I agree. And then when we went down the row and everybody asked, that was your position for sure. But then at the end, there was some conflicting. Yeah, we want to pursue it.
Again, consensus of the council is to work on amending the nuisance and business license ordinances to regulate the short-term rentals and provide for effective code enforcement.
Yeah, so we just left it as we would go back and just, bring back a proposal because we never did vote on it. And if it's still the will of the council that we don't want to do a short-term rental ordinance, that's okay.
I mean,
But we're just saying in order to address the problems, like what we
we said we
proposed
would do.
we would
yes.
do.
Yeah, that you and
administratively, we're just saying this is a much cleaner path to get there. But if it's not that big a deal to allow the nuisances, I don't know that we're gonna update the ordinance to address the actual issue of renting out rooms and, that sort of thing. So
yeah, I guess.
it's all one, but this is kind of the next step for, where we've never brought it to a
Yeah,
vote.
where do we want to go?
Yeah, and discussion, and there was some difference of opinion, and right at the end, after we went down the road, that was like, I remember, you said, yeah, let's just do what Layton does, and then it went down, and then right at the end, and we're like, so what do we do? And
At
then,
the end.
well, it came back,
Like
and
this.
it came back, because we were still saying, well, what do you want us to do with this? And I think Mayor said, yeah, we want to pursue it, I think is what he said, and then we're like, okay, pursue.
Yeah.
what?
Or
So,
pursue.
yeah, so we're not trying to put
Something
any,
needed to be done because.
Yeah. exactly,
Like you said, you and Roe recognize that there's some problems that need to be addressed.
same conversation, but that's kind of the context. We're not trying to put any pressure, we're just saying as on the administrative side that it's just a lot cleaner and a lot more straightforward on our end to do it through business license first and then enforce the business license, so. And if it's like, we went down the wrong path, we're okay with that. We're not trying to go divergent. It's just all part of that same conversation, like what you said. But before we do anything on the nuisance side, we do need to define, is there anything business license wise that we're interested in or not?
Well, I think that, the material that Stephanie brought, the one that I particularly like was up in Wasatch County. Can't remember whether it was Heber or.
Midway.
Pardon?
Midway.
Midway, yeah. I mean, there seemed to be bulletproof to me from a legal standpoint as I read through it. So there's some real good,
Stuff out there.
yeah, there's some real good stuff out there that nails it down for sure. One of the comments were made by a planning commission member that maybe we don't want added regulation. And if here's a short-term rental ordinance that follows similar, that could be added regulation, hence the cost that we talked about that enforce and so forth.
And that's definitely a lot less burdensome to leave it out of land use. Land use is a lot, that's a lot more than a business license. A business license is not a very rigorous process, it's just a path forward. And I've made this comment several times, but I look at it kind of opposite, where some people look at it as, well, that's just more regulation. And I look at it as, this is your path forward. So if you want to do this and have some protections,
Yeah.
the city's provided you, if you've checked all these boxes and a neighbor complains and we say they followed all the requirements, and we've given them an assurance that if they do that, and if they decide, well, I don't want to apply, I just want to do it under the radar, and a neighbor complains or they have an insurance claim, then all we say is we don't have that on record, right? So it's a service. I look at it as a
Yeah.
service as well.
Nonetheless, there's paths forward without an ordinance
Sure.
too, without a short-term rental ordinance, i.e. Layton, they have a path forward, I'm sure.
And they're a mess. I'm just kidding. I mean, their own attorney had to retire. It was that bad.
Yeah. Why do you think Gary's up here? Yeah.
And we got our own guy.
No, so it's
So
more, but
let me back up just a little bit, just to make sure it's clear in my mind. When you say we've got a short-term rental ordinance path. Another path would be a business license path. Is that a good way to define them? The two paths?
same path. We're saying that we would just recognize short-term rental as a business license, not as a land use.
When you look at recreation communities, do they include land use in some of these that we had reviewed before, the Midway and so forth? Are those a land use
Yeah,
component?
there's
with
some
it?
of them that have a whole recreation zone.
Okay,
That's a land use, and ours is not saying we're setting aside this, or it's only allowed in certain zones or not. Ours is just simply, if you're gonna do one and get a business license, it would only be permitted where it's a residential use. So we don't even need to define that. If someone just comes in with a business license application, we just say, yeah, that's a residence. But what we do is in the business license, define what activity are you proposing?
okay.
Are you talking about renting a basement, a room, a couch, or your whole thing, or an ADU? And not because we're gonna regulate the land use, we're just saying, you just tell us, hey, I'm a landlord, and then we say, well, as part of your business, who's the point of contact? So if we have a problem, who's the local point of contact? So we don't have a number for whoever's renting it. Do you have adequate parking to run this business?
Yeah, those are all good things.
Yeah, and then on a business license, if we have a problem and we come and say, hey, you never said your business license does not include renting a room, but that's what's happening, then we can revoke the business license or say you need to apply. And so that conversation's a lot different than showing up and saying, well, it's not excessive noise, it's excessive, parking for one night. But to do it on that side is just the same challenge. We're just gonna keep going around, and we'll write them a letter, say, fix it in 2 weeks. And then it's like, well, the problem went away 2 days later. So there's no response.
So
It's that type of conversation that we're just talking about, but not, it would just be instead of short-term rental ordinance, it would be more short-term rental business license.
Okay, so back to Layton then, Gary, if you could fill in a little bit, help out. You talk about not having an ordinance, but and then consider with that consideration of what Ty is talking about, which makes sense. How does Layton handle theirs?
So, my feeling is what Ty's recommending is probably a good thing. And the reason is
You push this button.
we had an actual
I want
example.
this on the record.
Oh,
I want it on the record.
I just said Ty had, that you were kind of online with what Ty said, so.
I think it was red when I said that.
I didn't
Wait a
want,
minute, turn that
I
off.
didn't want to miss that. I did have an attorney say Ty's mostly right.
It was
I was like,
mostly
what? Record that, so go ahead. Sorry.
But I see what Ty's talking about. There is a division between business license separate. You don't have to take that through the planning commission. The land use, it's not a police power thing. It's a licensing thing. And I really like the idea, mostly because in the last couple of weeks, before I left, there was a situation where we had a domestic violence situation in a home. What had happened is a lady was renting her rooms. And she was renting her rooms and there was only one bathroom and one kitchen in the place. And so what ended up happening is this lady came in with her baby and said, I'd like to rent a room. And she was willing to rent the room to this lady. And all of a sudden the boyfriend appears like 2 weeks later. And they had this rented space and they had one bathroom and they had one, she was willing to do that for the female resident, but not. So a business license, I'm just looking through this, just some of the business license items in Hurricane. And it requires that you have a bathroom, separate bathroom for these individual facilities. Those can be required under not land use, but under the business licensing. So they could control a different type of nuisance is what Ty is saying. And I wish we had that in Layton.
Okay, that's
Last week,
a
so.
question. How did you control that?
We didn't. We did a very poor job of doing it. And so I think if I were still there, I would recommend that we did impose some business licensing requirements.
And we wouldn't be able to control it here right now if we had that same situation.
Right. Yeah, so I see what both of you are saying. Land use, I think, Morgan, I think you want to encourage people to come up here and recreate and do the things that they do, but at the same time, you don't want to run into a problem like that, or you want to make sure they're licensed so that you can collect the TRT on it, the transfer tax.
allow that?
The licensing
It'll
would-
allow you to track it,
Mhm.
because if they do it independently on their own, then we would capture it. Airbnb is automatic, we get that anyway. VRBO, I think we get that.
But if we
Home away.
license them, we can require them to provide us their sales tax number. So we can make sure that it is coming back to us.
There's one more advantage, so you would be ahead of us in Layton. I hate to admit that, but you would. Well, no, I'm gone now. You can.
It'd be a good thing,
Who's the
right?
attorney in that?
Who's us? Now, anyway, that's just
It's a
kind
good
of where
idea.
we've taken the discussion. The other thing is, for them to just tell us what it is they're doing. Same thing on bathrooms. We can, it's interesting. I just went and stayed in one in St. George and it was, very well done. I saw the fire extinguisher right away, right up above the door. It said max occupancy. No on-street parking allowed per city code, whatever. And it was all communicated. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
To me, and it just feels like we want to propose or pursue this conversation, and if it's a no, then we will just go back, but I don't want to just start working on the code enforcement side of it for no end. I mean, it still needs updated, but
Yeah.
the issue we're really trying to get to is pretty well untouchable through nuisance.
You had talked about not being a burden administratively. Talk about that a little bit if we did move forward with this path.
So the applicant puts together the application, they can apply online. We do automatic renewal. So once they're set up, they can just renew. Nothing gets reviewed, but it's on them to come back and say, hey, I'm going from this type of rental to this type, or, I've added a bedroom. I'd like to change the conditions of my business license. But we really just review the application and the information, get the tax ID number, and then our business license fee is tied to the staff time in issuing a business license, so a dog license is whatever based on the time it takes us to issue one. So that's why when I say burden, it's staff time, it's effort, but it's also budgetary burden, if that makes sense. It's not one of those heavily subsidized activities because the applicant pays whatever that is. And so if the fees need to go up for certain types of business licenses, we just adjust it.
Talk a little bit about enforcement and
So-
related to costs.
So enforcement's,
I mean, we're gonna have enforcement no matter what.
right, but it's still based on a complaint
Blake,
basis. If we have a problem, all it does is it gives us the ability to go back and say, well, this is what they're permitted for. They're inside the boundaries of their business license and we approved it. But we will keep track of noise or some secondary process. If we get a complaint, hey, this is happening, and we review it and it says, well, they applied for a long-term rental and it's changing hands all the time, then we can revoke a business license.
Would a short-term rental fee be specific to that business
right.
license so that if it does get expensive or it does get pricey, that can go up?
We just adjust it.
Gotcha.
And it's also a chance for us to communicate back the requirements that they may have not thought of, like fire extinguisher, do you have a second access? You have egress windows. Just depending on what they're planning on doing,
Smoke detectors.
smoke detectors, just basic things, but
It require an inspection in advance
yeah.
by us.
Yeah, and they'd have to register as a business and get a tax ID number, which I've done a couple times. It takes like 30 minutes. It's less than 30 days. Yep. And then if you go, oh, this isn't relevant to the conversation, but if you go past 6 months, then you can actually get a primary residence exemption that's a longer term rental. But
What do we do for long-term rentals, or would that be incorporated in?
it would be incorporated. So right now, most of the time we just have a landlord. We do it through utilities. You have a landlord account. We talked about that before, about keeping the utilities in the landlord's name. And so same thing, you just start landlording, you just get a business license.
But on a long-term rental, you could have the tenants, I would think.
Well, they could do this utility separate, but we would still just have it part of a business license, right? You would just say, I'm a landlord and come get a business license. So we still have who's the contact, who to respond to on complaints and whatnot.
But you would declare that when you went to
Yeah.
get your business license, am I getting some, I'm doing
Right.
short term, I'm doing long term, or I'm doing bed and breakfast, I'm doing.
Right. Or I'm going long-term to short-term. I'm gonna give that a
You're
try. Come and amend your business license.
My only comment is, I've had several discussions with Roe and again, Stephanie, you can step in if I misspeak here, but I think Roe's frustration is that he has complaints and yet he doesn't feel he has enough teeth to go out and help enforce it or to make some change. Now, obviously, it's going to be based, on complaints. It's going to be, it's not going to be proactive, but if somebody makes a complaint, then Roe at least would have the ability to go to that, address that complaint and have some teeth that he could go in there with and say, okay,
Yes.
you're out of compliance with this. And
So to that point, no matter how well we define it, the process is still a long process where you give them a warning, you wait 2 weeks.
Right.
You go back, you write them a first written warning and it's 2 weeks, and then they maybe fix it for a while or they don't. And then you go back and by the time you get to any real penalty, it's not until after 3 times, which is for 2 week back and forth. And then at the end of that, all it is you go to the judge for failure to comply, and then you get a ruling, and then that's what you're left with. So a business license is just a more direct, immediate, operating without a license. There's just some better options
well, I like the fact that they got to declare what business they're
in.
What are they going to use that property for?
Yeah.
That's one of the things that I like about, as I look through this hurricane draft that Stephanie's given us. I mean, I just think there's quite a few things in there that make sense to me, and a lot of them have to do with safety, ingress and egress and carbon monoxide and smoke detectors. And I thought it was pretty interesting personally to see what some of the requirements were. So.
And that's what I liked about it, is it's not like nitpicky on out of the ordinary stuff. This is stuff that should be there anyway. So it should be there for a business, it should be there for rental. It's nothing out of the ordinary or would cause undue burden on the landlord or anything like that. That's kind of why this one really stood out, yet it gives us some ordinance and some backing so we can enforce stuff and maintain safety and the integrity of our neighborhoods.
So,
And I like that comment you just said, Stephanie, integrity of our neighborhood. I think that's important and something we got to bear in mind.
but yeah, just, it is the same goal as to take, and that's not very often we're gonna have an issue. Regardless, it's still gonna be the same thing, but it's just, how much we have on the back of when we do some enforcement, when there is a problem. This is just more straightforward. And on the regulation side, I'm not one way or the other, being political, but we require a dog to be licensed and vaccinated and spayed or neutered. And I mean, you have to tell all these details about, a pet, how many, we even discriminate against some types of animals. But my point is that there are just some things where there's a right way to do it. And
So Ty, as you look at Stephanie's recommendations, or when I don't say that's probably not a fair word, recommendation, her
Draft.
suggestions, that she's given, is there anything there that wouldn't make sense? Or maybe you haven't had a chance to really look at it that close.
well, we've had
Okay.
several meetings back and forth where we've talked. We've had a handful of, we've had, can't even remember. Was it just you, me and Teresa? Teresa, anyway, we've had some internal discussions just to talk through what makes sense, right? And what's the basic
Guess what I'm leading up to is
I'm comfortable with.
yeah,
She's the one that does the licensing.
so deals with it firsthand.
Yeah.
What I'm maybe leading up to is there's probably ordinances out there that would there be good components of those that may be part of what we would do as well as this right here that we would want to consider?
I'll let her answer
You know,
that, but I've been to meetings and followed some patterns and like there's a couple of them that I just don't like the way they do it, where they're like, we're gonna put a limit on the number, you know what I mean? Like how many alcohol licenses are you gonna do? And it creates artificial demand. There's people that are creating waiting lists. There's these other ways that they become administratively burdensome that you got to keep track of all these other things. But I think this is pretty straightforward and not too cumbersome.
Okay.
But I do think the part that I do like though is where in the business license and we define, because right now it's like, is it a bed and breakfast? Well, that's different than a couch versus a short-term and a long-term rental. That really just spells out, what are you doing? And then our requirements are like Steph said, just prompts. Those are like, hey, did you really think about making this a space that's conducive to
A rental.
renting it out? Or
Eric?
Thank you, Tony. A couple of things I want to bring up. One, I can talk about it. Well, I could talk about it anyway. I did own a long-term rental. I owned a second house here in Morgan. I did a long-term rental for a lot of years with it. The last thing on my mind would have been to actually go get a business license and almost create a business. And then I got to get a tax ID number. And the last thing that I probably would have wanted to do in order to rent that second house, I'm just being honest, would probably have to go through that procedure of actually setting up a business, setting up the tax ID number, setting up this. I do appreciate in the ordinance all the safety things. That would be helpful for me if I was going to go down that path to make sure that all those safety issues, and I appreciate that because it was always, it's like, oh man, I hope these smoke detectors are working. But anyway, I think, so I kind of go down that road a little bit of, man, it just seems like if I wanted to do that, that's just a lot of kind of extra steps I'd have to do in order to do that. And I guess if you're gonna, is it in my mind, is it really a business? I mean, I would have had to started the Eric's rental, whatever it was gonna be, you know?
LLC.
Yeah, I think the IRS
And-
would tell
and
you it
so
was a
it-
business.
I mean, then I get the regulations, I understand that, but I just kind of one of those things in my mind, I say this, oftentimes we create laws and regulations and then it's like, to Ty's point, I think about this, well, now what are we gonna do to enforce it? You know, who's gonna be the sheriff to pass this new rule and does this new rule fit? And so I do see the need for this new rule. A couple of things that I also see in this, that as I read through it, right in here in the one from Hurricane, it refers to short-term rental business a lot. I think if we were to go down this road any further, I think we really need to define, you've already kind of said it verbally, Ty, as a short term would be 30 days, a long term's this. I think we need some clear directions as to what really that would fall under. Is a long-term rental, is that from 30 days to 6 months? What if I had tenants that had signed a year contract with me for that? Would that be a different thing? And I think we need to, if we're gonna head down this road, I think we need to get really kind of defined. I notice it says short-term in here a lot. But does that fit into a long-term rental? Does it fit into an ADU? I think there needs to be some verbiage as if you're gonna do ADU, here's what you need to do. The other thing that's a little bit concerning for me also is, does this apply to family members living in the home? I mean, if there's a basement apartment, how do we determine that? As a niece, a family, as a nephew, a family, as a second cousin, a family, as a third cousin, twice removed relative is. So I think some of those things need to probably be flushed out, you know, because, I mean,
So, are you charging or not?
yeah, you're charging or you're not. Well, what if you're just charging them a little $100 or whatever
The utilities?
to cover the utilities?
Sorry.
No, that's great. You're fine. You know, or is it, hey, you know, you're supposed to clean the house because my parents are old and so, you know, I want you to clean the house and do this and this, and you work out something different than maybe actual payment. And so I think some of those things, if we're gonna head down this road, that's kind of the way I'm seeing this, is we need to define probably some more almost definitions of this is what we consider ADU. This is what we consider. I do like though the idea, the concept of, okay, if you're gonna do this ADU, where's the bathroom? Is there 2 kitchens? Is there 1? Cause that, I can see where that creates problems. And so in my mind, I think we need to go, does that make sense? What I'm trying to say is go a little deeper on this ordinance to say, this is gonna be this is gonna be this. We need to, long-term, is this thing 1 year plus, 6 months plus?
Yeah.
That would be my recommendation, so.
So to your point, Eric, so we mentioned a moment ago that when they come in for the business license, they would specify what they were, what their plan was, short-term, long-term, ADU. I mean, bed and breakfast. I don't even know what we call a boarding house. I don't really know what that definition would be.
So in the Hurricane one, they have it under,
And maybe I already,
oh, where did it
But
go?
my question is, would each of those have different sets of regulations, or would they,
Yeah,
and they would all be, to Eric's point, very, very defined?
and that was on like the combined meeting. We would have definitions for everything if we pursued down this road.
Did that answer your
but-
question, Eric?
Why define
your
everything if we're not gonna go down that road? We've got to figure out what direction we're going. And Tony, back to your thing, in their ordinance, or in their definitions, it's hosting,
Hosting,
residential hosting.
okay,
And that defines if it's a room, if it's, that way you don't have people renting out a couch.
Right.
Or
right.
a futon in an office, or, you know, it gives you a little bit of guidance of what is acceptable as a rentable space.
Because to Gary's point, you got 5 people renting out couches in one bathroom. I don't know how well that works out. So, but does that help out, Eric? Does that sort of to help? with
It
that?
does, it does. And you know, and it's kind of one of those things too, is I'm putting myself in that business owner's, I'll call it that, the business owner, I'm the owner's point of view. And so I've got this, I'm gonna use a short-term rental on this one. I'm a short-term rental business owner and, somebody rents my unit from me and, hey, here's the rules, but it's hard because even you say hotel, how many people's in your hotel room? And you say 2 and you end up with 10 in there and, you know, because they're trying to save money. And oftentimes I feel that in that situation, I don't know, you know, you could end up with 30 people in your short-term rental, and granted, there's ways Airbnb and they handle that, but I mean, if you wasn't going through one of those particular,
Right.
yeah, sites or businesses, then you kind of doing it on your own. I don't know. I worry about the regulation on that too, you
That's the
know?
nice thing too, is in here, it says that the rules have to be posted. So it's not that you're trying to overregulate, but hey, here's the rules.
Yeah,
And then it's up to the person. If they choose to break them, it's on them.
I guess that's a good point. You've done everything you can. The city's done everything we
Yep.
can. And I guess really, at the end of the day, it's kind of like, you always got to say, well, does it cover us? Does it cover the business owner? And I guess that answers that question. So,
And then back to your other question, like long-term rentals. That's not a TRT tax that comes back to the city. So that wouldn't require like a sales tax number. That's a different setup.
see,
for a long
and
term.
so, yeah, and so that would just be nice to kind of go, hey, I'm gonna do this, and you can get that information
Yeah.
back going. If this is a long-term rental, you're gonna sign a year contract, you don't need the this and this and this. So I'm just saying, I think
Yeah.
the information needs to be kind of presented up front as
Filled
to
out.
spelled out.
Yeah.
And maybe we're getting there, maybe I'm getting ahead of the thing here, but I think that's part of the discussion we need to have too.
So the business license requirement would cast a net over Airbnb and everything else. I mean, they're just because they're part of another group or association, they're not exempt from what we're doing.
Justin Reese brought up a good point in planning meeting. No, Justin has an Airbnb up in Canada. And so he was pretty familiar with that. And he says that Airbnb, VRBOs, they have some pretty strict guidelines of their own. They do
They do.
a pretty good job of policing their own property and, you know, that type of thing. So, but yeah, that was kind of an interesting discussion. I hadn't thought of that much, but
So on the,
that would be short term.
on the short term, on the licensing side, and I know we don't want burdens, but someone's gone through the process of figuring out how to get it listed, how to figure out your cleaning service, how
Yeah.
to,
Yeah.
how to stock it, right, decorate it. So, like on the long term, the same, I have 4 long-term rentals. I have a LLC just for my own liability. It's not difficult to get a tax ID, but that's the way I chose to do it. But there's a lot of reasons I do that for tax purposes all by itself. So
That's a good point.
you know what I'm saying? It's like, well, if it was my brother and I'm like, hey, I'm just gonna rent you a place, that's different than saying I'm recognizing that, you know, I want to protect myself here. I'm doing some business.
And along the lines of your question of if it's family, if it's a cousin, if it's a niece, a nephew, whatever, maybe when we define, if they bring in documentation that it's family, whether by blood or by marriage, your license is $25 because you're still running a business. Whether it's family or not, but there's stuff that we can do on the back end that if it's family, we don't want it to be burdensome, but we want you to declare that you're conducting business.
Yeah.
You know, family are still individuals, and I think we'd expect them to, you know, not be in the hot tub after 11 o'clock, just like a person from Nebraska after 11. But so the rules are the rules, and they'd have to abide by them. My guess is that if if you say to your daughter, you're in between homes, come and stay in my basement for 3 months, you're probably not going to say anything to anybody and it's not going to matter. I'm not going to go down and get a business license for 3 months. And even though maybe technically I should, and I guess if there was enough enforcement, you probably would, but nonetheless, I think we'd expect everybody to abide by the same rules regardless.
And just on the enforcement side, maybe to bring the other look back on how it's actually gonna work. So some are gonna decide to, some are gonna decide not to, but if we have a problem and we
I think
show
you've
up.
got something to fall back on.
Well, what we do is instead of say, clean up this mess or don't let that happen again, we say, we don't have record that you have a business license, go apply for a business license,
Mhm.
right? So that's the first. That's the first code enforcement issue is just come in and tell us what you're doing and then we'll go through the process of getting them all up to snuff. And then they, and maybe it was, oh, I didn't even think about having a fire extinguisher. I just, like a lot of that will be, oh, I didn't think about it. And so it's not just the enforcement side, it's helping them to the, here's your path forward, here's how to do it correctly, so.
So either the two Jeffs, any thoughts or comments before we make a decision?
No, I think it's all good, this information that Steph's come up with and stuff, because I think we
Yeah,
do need some
okay.
control on short-term rentals.
Okay,
as much as we can do to get people to come in and let us know what their plans are. And I like the business license side. So I think we need to.
Safety's probably a big thing with me is
pardon?
the safety.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that makes sense. Not unlike Gary's story there that safety or otherwise. So I guess tonight we need to give
Well, that was-
direction to where we're headed and
That was my next comment was,
Yeah.
so what is the output of this meeting? Is it just a head nod to
Yeah, keep pursuing
Going down.
keep pursuing it and
this is just what we've
is
brought back and Eric gave some specific feedback, you know what I mean? And so we'll, we're just keep, getting something ready to propose.
okay, I think that's our key right there is that you would come back with a proposal
Yeah.
after it's
Is-
been vetted on your part.
That's
and-
why we have work
Yeah.
sessions, so we hear perspective and
Yeah.
different comments. And if it was like, I'm
Right.
not here, that's not for us, then we would
Yeah.
just go back and just work on code enforcement. But this is kind of what we felt like the next step
I think
was.
we're taking the temperature here tonight.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
I'd say we move forward.
so, yeah, what
The
Keep
proposal.
moving.
what is the,
And then, of course, Gary would have some input and if there's something that they missed that should be in there.
what do you think, Eric?
I think what we ought to do is move forward. I really do. I think this would be a good step for us. I think by moving forward, it not only maybe protect the business owner, but also protect the city in a little bit. So we got some teeth to,
Okay,
I'd still be interested in seeing the final output, but
well, there's a lot of work to do.
There's a lot of work
There's a
to
lot
get
of work
there.
to do. There's no doubt
Right.
about it, and Stephanie, we certainly appreciate all that you've done on this. I mean, I know you've spent a lot of time on this and we appreciate your work on that. So, but I think you had a consensus here that the council is interested in moving forward and seeing what you can come up with and put together. So, and there has been some really valid discussions here. So,
In that
Appreciate the input.
hurricane format may be a good one to start with. I mean, as I look at it, it's seemed to be clearly written and straightforward and not terribly cumbersome. I mean, what have you got? 4 pages, 5 pages, maybe?
well, you probably looked at others besides, I know you have others besides, but this is the one that stands out to you probably among all that you've looked at.
The
Okay.
one that is simple yet covers important things.
Right, right. Okay.
So Gary, when we get this all put together, can we export it to Layton?
Yeah.
Think we can get some money from it? Yeah.
So Gary, would this
He's not allowed to consult for over a year or something like that, like you can't work for him for a year or something, I can't remember what the retirement.
What do you mean? I'm gonna be the one that takes.
Uh-huh.
proposal to him.
As a resident.
Gary,
Nice, we can do you good.
Gary, if this comes to fruition, this would first have to go through planning.
I don't
No.
think so.
Nope, just straight back to city council.
It's just,
Okay.
this is a
Speed up the
business license
process a little
ordinance,
bit.
so.
that
Kind of
would-
administrative.
That would be fine.
Yeah.
Mayor Gale, welcome.
Oh, I thought that was Santa visiting us.
Hello there. Can you hear me? Sure can.
Welcome, Steve.
Chime in anytime you want.
It all sounds great. I'd like to thank Stephanie too. She works hard.
Yeah, she has done a good job for us, so.
And by the way, there's no deer we're shooting yet, so
Well, pardon?
There's no.
there's no deer we're shooting yet.
Oh, yeah, well, that's okay. There's no deer here anyway.
Yeah.
Just,
Hard to find indoors.
just 5 mile walks.
Steve, could you get a red cap with a white tassel on top?
I have an orange cap.
Yeah,
Here you go.
There you go.
well, yeah, that's close.
Well, if there's any other discussion on this item. If not, let's go ahead and adjourn our work meeting and we'll have a little 5-minute recess. And once again, thank you, Stephanie, so much for your time.
Well,
Yeah, I would never guess we had that problem.
There you
The
are.
other day, while we were there, the lady was crying and saying, how do I get this? He's get this guy out, he's threatening me to say. And I was sitting there thinking, we don't have an ordinance. We need to have
I
one.
mean, I think you see my point. It's like.
Yeah, yeah, so that would have been good, but it doesn't need to your point, it doesn't need to be a land use prohibition or mandate. I think that's,
Much.
You know,
Get a discussion going.
well, that works. I like when you do that.
I know, which is wise and smart. Yeah, that's true.
I think we will be a better product. That's the whole, of it, right? So,
Yeah. Yeah. In fact, if we look at short-term rentals and I read the originals, Stephanie had sent out, pick one and roll. They had to tell our meeting and we'll talk about the reasons that they wouldn't require doing full. Concept that we.
that reduces your, I don't think you've got as much to enforce if you've got your business license.
Yeah.
Because it's-
Again, we're gonna, not unlike Layton, just doesn't have a problem with it, right? And we've got problems, but they're not necessarily true.
No,
Problems with them.
but at the same time, you recognize it is a business. And people make some pretty good money. I've got a neighbor that gets rented every single day. And I think it's mostly because of the Air Force base that we rented.
Is that a neighbor
Sure.
to you?
Yeah, just, and it's great. I don't even know that they're
They
there
do it
most of the
right.
day. Yeah, they do. They do a really good job of it. So I think it is a business, so it ought to be tracked, but certainly not restricted. We want to encourage that.
Just switching gears, maybe you already knew this, you're going down 84 there and, there's a new trailer court that went in.
Yes,
Just on the freeway and immediately that thing was full. It has been, there's not a.
are you talking about Layton? Or are you talking about
South Weaver?
South Weaver?
Yes.
Because there's one in Layton too.
Oh, it's-
Yeah, a brand new one.
Probably come up with the same conclusion.
Yeah.
And so Mary and I would drive by that and I'd say, for a KOA, that's awfully full. There's some awfully nice trailers in there. You don't very often see a spot in a spot. Even in the winter, it's always. And I had a neighbor tell me. It's base Air Force base contractors.
Oh, yes.
They'll follow a contract.
Yeah,
And they'll bring
yeah.
a trailer, and that's where they'll stay for 3 months until a contract. So,
That's actually who's filling up this other part
Yes.
too. It's on Fort Lane.
okay.
It's off of Fort Lane to the west as you come off of 193. So come off of 193.
Got you.
And on the right-hand side, you'll see it's gorgeous, it's beautifully done.
Yeah, this is
It's really well done.
well, this one here, you can see it advances.
Yeah, yeah, same thing. I think you've got to do that
Yes.
because the commander of the base told us that over the next 3 years, they would be bringing in 3,000 contractors
Is that right?
to do various things on the base.
Yeah,
which-
and they're not
And
gonna,
they have no temporary
they're
housing.
not gonna be there for the long term.
You mind kind of speaking on this annexation? Oh, sure.
You bet.
All right, we'll wait for you. Yeah.
It was good. Everybody was good. A lot of people. No. Nope.
Bite your tongue, mister. Bite your tongue.
Hey, my grandkids hadn't even heard it, so, no. Yeah. Badly. I have a tough time throwing it away though. Oh, my word. One that I prefer to forget.
Are we ready to do these? Looks like it's 7 o'clock. Okay, so let's go ahead and call this meeting to order. Morgan City Council meeting. November the 14th, 2023. I'd like to welcome everyone here. We would like to excuse Mayor Gale. He is, well, I think he's online electronically, so but he's not here in person, but and also like to welcome anyone else that might be online as well. And welcome Jake, our planner. We'd like to
Good evening.
with an opening ceremony. And I've neglected to ask anyone to give the Pledge of Allegiance or pray. So Jeffrey, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance? And Jeff, would you mind giving us an opening prayer? Okay, so
Everybody please rise and repeat the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Our dear Father in heaven, we meet this evening as a city council and discuss the things of the city. We ask that blessing be upon us as we make our decisions and stuff that best affects and helps everyone in the community. We're so grateful for this community we had to live in, and ask that blessing on all of us and also on those in the military and first responders and whatnot, provides their safety and stuff. And these things we say and ask for in the name of the Son, Jesus Christ.
amen. Thank you, Jeffrey. Thank you, Jeff. Does anyone prepared to make a motion concerning the approval of the meeting's agenda tonight?
Well moved. Yeah.
I'll second that.
Motion by Jeff Wardell to approve of the meeting's agenda, second by Eric Turner. Do we have any discussion on the meeting agenda? If not, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That is unanimous. Let's go down to our consent agenda at this time. Anyone had an opportunity to look over the city council work meeting minutes, city council meeting minutes, and the warrants? And if so, is anyone prepared to make a motion?
Tony, I'd move to accept the city council work meeting minutes of September twelfth, the city council meeting minutes of the same date, council meeting minutes of October tenth, and the warrants from 10/6/23 to 11/9/23.
Very good. Motion by Dave.
Mayor, or not Mayor, Tony,
Be
sorry.
careful there. Okay.
Abbott. I've also reviewed the minutes and the warrants, and I'll second that motion.
Okay, motion by Dave, second by Eric. Is there any other comments or possible corrections on the minutes or warrants? If not, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Is there any opposed? That is unanimous, Denise. We'll move on down to citizens' comments. Denise, do we have any citizen comments? How about anyone out there in the audience? Do you have a comment? What are you pointing at her for, Cole? Okay. Okay. If there is no citizen comments, let's move on down to the active agenda. Item A, the final acceptance of the Riverside Townhomes Phase 1 subdivision. And you have on your table in front of you, you have a letter from staff concerning this. And I don't know if you've had an opportunity to look at it yet, but I'll give you a moment to look at it. And if you have any comments, please feel free at this time to make them. Ty, do you want to just briefly run us through this real quick?
Yeah, so this is just final acceptance. We release the bond, part of that 5,000 will go to the city to chip it, to do chip seal. And if we have money left over at that point, we would return or reimburse the developer for the amount remaining. Anything else? Cole, looks like you want to say something, so you got a microphone.
I can talk loud. So, we walked it the other day with Ben Slater and Lance Prescott and signed off on pretty much everything that was on the punch list. I believe there's 153,000 and some change left in that escrow account. There was a little bit of concern. We did the chip and seal right towards the end of the warm season, and then just due to schedules and being stacked up and having to pave the next day, I had Geneva in there with some big trucks. And so there was a couple little spots down at the bottom end that got buggered up a little bit. And so, I mean, we're talking 40 cents a square foot to, patch this. And so I think we kind of just came up with the idea of if we leave 5,000 in there, that's going to cover anything that's going to need to be done and then some. So
That's a better explanation. Thank you.
Thank you, Cole. Any other comments or questions from the council? If not, I am prepared to accept a motion.
Mayor, I'd move to, or Tony,
Thank you for that clarification.
Tony, future mayor,
Thank you for that clarification.
move to accept resolution 23-31. Resolution adopting an agreement for the annexation and
Nope. Final acceptance,
Final acceptance.
active agenda, item A.
oh, I'm on the wrong one. My
Yeah.
apology.
Got a little,
Yeah, she's like, shut up.
got a little. Here you go, David. You got it?
Yeah, let me read that. Well, I've got that part. Well, then I'd move that I propose we accept final acceptance of the Riverstone Townhomes Phase One subdivision and the subsequent escrow release as outlined by our staff.
Okay, motion by Dave. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Second by Jeffrey Richens. Any other comments? Concerns? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Is there any opposed? Okay, that passes. You have final acceptance. So thanks for being here, Cole.
Thank you.
Now we are going to move down to item B on the active agenda, and this is the agreement for annexation and development of land between Morgan City and Lisa C. and Sean Priest, Waylon S. and Michaela Priest, Blake E. and Eugenia H. Rouser, Arlene S. Christensen, trustee, and Deanne E. Johnson, trustee. Property located at approximately 555 Old Highway Road, 936 North, 700 East, 1075 North, 700 East, 1050 North, 600 West, Morgan, Utah. Gary, could you please walk us through this, help us with this?
Sure. This is another step in the process towards annexation, actually the final step towards annexation of the property that you just described. And with every annexation comes concerns over the fact that both parties need to understand, both the city and the owners of the property need to understand in detail sometimes exactly what needs to happen once the property is annexed. And so for that purpose, we put together what's called an annexation agreement, which is, you're familiar with it as a development agreement. That's typically what it is, but this one precedes the actual adoption of the annexation ordinance. And so what you're looking at here is a resolution that actually adopts the annexation agreement for the property that was just described. And in that agreement, there are standards regarding the utilities, details regarding the roads, the other things that will need to be done as time goes on, as property is developed, as this property is developed. And I think there is a subdivision that is intended to immediately be submitted and approved. And so it provides for that information regarding that as well. And so hopefully we've covered everything that we need to prior to annexation. And then the next thing you'll have the opportunity of looking at is after a public hearing, the actual annexation ordinance itself, along with in that ordinance, it does change the zoning on the site to comply with what the city's master plan shows. So that's really what this is that agreement. Are there any concerns or questions regarding that? You'll notice in 3.6 that we've actually adopted the city engineer's memorandum, and I think that's important because there are a number of items in that memorandum that were best said by the engineer, and so we just adopted that verbatim.
Yeah, we discussed that at our previous meeting, so I appreciate you including that.
I think that's a good thing.
Anyone have any other questions or items of concern at this point? This property, as I understand it, already has service from the city for both water and power, correct? Okay. I don't know if you had an opportunity to look through the staff's notes. There was what, five bullet points, five concerns on there.
Yes.
Anyone have any discussion on those, or is everyone okay with that?
I mean, not any more than we discussed before. Yeah, we
Okay,
again vetted that pretty good last meeting.
okay. Hey, if not, everyone is okay with this, I am prepared to take a motion.
Do we need to?
Well, we have to pass this first before we can go into the
Okay,
public.
sorry.
One and then the other, right?
Sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, if this doesn't pass, we wouldn't have a public hearing, but this has to pass first.
Gotcha. Okay, sorry.
All right, okay,
Can I try again?
yes, you may. This is Dave part 2.
Tony, I would propose that we adopt resolution 23-31. Resolution adopting an agreement for the annexation and development of land between Morgan City and Lisa C. and Sean D. Priest, Waylon S. and Michaela Priest, Blake E. and Eugenia H. Rouser, Arlene S. Christensen, trustee, and Deanne C. Johnson, trustee.
Okay. Would you mention the property too, Dave, where it's located?
It is approximately 555 West Old Highway Road, 936 North 700 East, 1075 North 700 East, and 1050 North 600 West. Is hereafter referred to as the annexation area.
Thank you, Dave. Motion by Dave to adopt that ordinance, which is, resolution, which is 23-31. Do I have a second?
I'll second that, Mayor.
Second.
Sorry,
by-
Tony.
Thank you.
Yes,
great.
have to have it. Everybody.
Be careful.
Yeesh.
Okay. We have a motion by Dave Alexander, second by Jeffrey Richards. Is there any other discussion on that resolution? We'll do a roll call vote. Jeffrey Richards,
Aye.
Jeff Wardell, Eric,
Aye.
Dave Alexander.
Aye.
That is unanimous, Denise.
Am I redeemed?
Now, Eric, we move into a public hearing, so we probably need a motion to proceed with the public hearing.
moved. Second.
Motion by Eric, second by Jeffrey to move into the public hearing concerning the annexation of property located at 555 West Old Highway Road, 936 North 700 East, 1075 North 700 East, and 1050 North 600 West Morgan. Contains approximately 54.36 acres. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. We are now in a public hearing. Anyone, Sean, Lisa, any comments you want to make? Now's your chance. Speak now or forever hold your peace.
It said something about. Oh, it's on. Like our existing house that's on our property, and then when we sell the part to our son, they both have to be hooked to the sewer? Or just the new house? But he sits on 700 East.
Who does?
Josh's house.
Oh, Josh's, it won't go past Josh's house.
No,
It'll only go past the.
yeah, just mom's and,
So
yeah.
then, as I understood it, Josh wouldn't have to pump because it's not gonna run up past his house. It's
Okay.
only gonna run past yours.
I was
Is
just
that
making,
correct?
So the requirement is if both the health department and the city have a requirement that if it's within 300 feet of the sanitary sewer line,
yeah,
they have to hook on. But if it's not, it would remain the way that it was until it was further developed.
okay. That's my only question I had.
Way you understand it as well.
I
Right.
think you're spot on.
Right.
Gary.
Okay.
Does that answer your question, Lisa? Is that, okay. Is there any other Jake, do you have any comments on this?
I don't. I do have a few slides on the location and that regarding the zoning, but I don't know if you want to talk about that now or later.
We could probably go through that now, Jake.
The zoning is incorporated in the same ordinance, so that would be great. That would be all right.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay, 1 second here.
While you're looking for that, Jake, I would just want to clarify, I think Planning Commission stated that the dirt road going down the north end will not be part of the annexation. It belongs to the state of Utah.
Well, that's correct. It's not included in the plat. But if it were if development did happen, then the city could require that to come into the city, which would make sense in the future.
But not part of our action tonight.
Correct, yeah. So here's the location, the 54.3 acres. You'll see that there, both north and south of I-84. The landowners requested that the existing homes be zoned R110, and then no recommendation on the rest of the land. And so the Planning Commission recommended agriculture for those areas. That makes sense just because it's currently being used as ag, and it could be some time before those properties are developed into anything beyond agriculture. There's the plat maps, which you've seen. Future land uses per current land use map is low density residential on the north, and then highway commercial next to the highway, and then rural residential here. Adjacent zoning, RM15 here. Forgot what the yellow is. I think that's R110 there in the yellow, and then the green is highway commercial, and then ag south of town. So certainly the adjacent land uses in terms of zoning match the requests. So that's it on recommendations for future zoning. And part of the reason for the R110 is adjacent zoning request by the owner. They do want to split some of the properties into smaller lots, and the R110 gives them more flexibility for that.
Oh, Jake, can we go back to that one map that you just had?
You bet.
I guess this is a question for both you, maybe, and Gary. I think they're calling it 1100 north, going from 700 east down toward the interstate there.
Right here.
Right there, which is, as I understand it right now, is that a county road? That's the state road. That's not a county road, right? Well, okay, and so part two, is that going to remain a state road, or will the city at some point take that?
No, it will not be part of the annexation. That was.
It's not part of the
No, that was
annexation.
my comment.
No, it depends on what the development.
Down the
development
road.
comes in.
But not at this point.
No, not at this
I just
point.
wanted to be clear on that, so.
And that's also another reason for the ag zoning, is because you know, the current road doesn't support significant development. It would need to be, you know, right away widened and a new road built to accommodate that.
Okay, thank you, Jake. Any other questions for Jake? Thanks, Jake, for that clarification.
Thank you.
Do we have any other discussion while we're in public hearing? From the public? Council?
No.
Then I will entertain a motion to come out of the public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Eric, seconded by Jeffrey Richens to come out of the public hearing. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And with that, I will entertain a motion on ordinance 23-15. Anyone prepared to make that motion?
I am, Tony.
Okay, Dave, please.
Move that we approve ordinance 23-15, an ordinance declaring the annexation of real property into Morgan City. Property is 54.36 acres in area and is located at approximately 555 West Old Highway Road, 936 North 700 East, 1075 North 700 East, and 1050 North 600 West. Morgan City, and owned by Lisa C. and Sean D. Priest, Waylon S. and Kayla Priest, Blakey and Eugenia H. Browser, and Arlene S. Christensen and Deanne C. Johnson, trustees.
Thank you, Dave. Motion by Dave. Do I have a second? Second by Jeff Wardell. Gentlemen, is there any more discussion on that motion?
I'd add one more component, and that is that the annexation has been talked about in prior meetings, just for reference, if anyone cares to look at it in both planning and city council.
Yes, it always concerns me that somebody that just listens to our city council meetings might think, boy, you guys blew through that in a hurry, you know? and
Exactly.
They don't realize all the background and all
Yep,
the work
yep.
that's gone into this at this point. So good point, Dave. Thank you. Any other discussion? Let us do a roll call vote. Dave,
Aye.
Eric,
Aye.
Jeff,
Aye.
and Jeffrey.
Aye.
That is unanimous. Thank you all. Thank you for being here. You're welcome to stay. It's better than TV.
Just getting good. Dishes,
Aye.
laundry, anything's better.
Have a good night.
Thank you.
All right, we will continue on with our active agenda. Item C, the Sunnyside Waste Coal Facility project. Ty, we need you to walk us through this, please.
So this is just ratifying my signature. I already signed, but we're part of the firm. It's called the Firm Project at UAMPS. And so it's a collection of different resources that we don't have ownership in. It's just a power purchase agreement. So we signed up to take some power out of the Sunnyside heat recovery project at $71.25 megawatts. We put in for 50 kilowatts, I think, and then I think we ended with less than that, but not a,
It's 49.3 something.
yeah,
So it's pretty close.
pretty.
It's at a half a megawatt.
Yes, so not a ton. It's a 2-year purchase. But it's just under what it'll help our summers out in a big way, and it's pretty consistent with what our average has been cost wise. Just not enough room to buy more than that, but Sunnyside facility is just in East Carbon County.
So what's the generation source?
It's coal ash. So they reprocess burnt coal, yeah. And then I don't know all the technology behind this one. I just looked at the pricing, the amount, but like heat recovery, you take a source that's already been heating, just generate you kind of reheat it, but it's already up there just to create steam as a secondary process. So
How does the $71 per megawatt hour compare with other sources now?
May I piggyback on that? I was gonna ask a similar question. Well, in reference to what we were paying pool price last summer.
Oh, way less than pool price. Well, in a couple months, so like, we were paying, 180, so 180 something dollars per megawatt in the summer, for pool. This is pretty consistent with the price we pay for wind. And before, wind is right around $8, $9, $80 or $90. And then our best resource, which is 30% of our portfolio, is hydro. And it's usually about $40. So this is right in the average. This isn't gonna kick our average up. It only has upside for us when we'll just have a little less exposure to those extreme high market prices during summer.
How do you decide on half a megawatt versus more?
Well, part of it is because it's how many people are putting in.
Everybody wants some.
Yeah, and then our relative size. The other part of that is our need. So we're about 1,500 kilowatts, so 1.5 megawatts short. at certain times of the year. And that's what we've just been trying to replace. And so this is a good, notch in that for 2 years while we continue to try and develop we have other projects that we're part of that just haven't come online yet. Some solar and whatnot, but and then we've also done market purchases, like 5-year purchases that guarantee us pricing. And anyway, this was kind of right in between where we had the first meeting in October, not the second meeting in October. We just thought we'd bring it back to council, but I signed it. So.
Sunnyside's ready to roll, all the permitting and everything.
That's the thing, is it's already a functioning facility. This is just buying power out of it.
Great.
So that's also what's different when you're different than buying ownership in a developing project.
Okay.
So there's no other maintenance costs or that's all included in the price. Like if we call back IPP power, then we also pay a portion of the debt and maintenance costs at the same time. So
All of that's covered in the 71.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Any other questions for Ty?
Looked like there was an option to renew for 2 more years after.
Yeah.
So we may tie into that also.
Hmm.
Okay.
Making it pretty easy on him. Well, hey, if there is no other questions or comments, I am once again prepared to take a motion on, this is a resolution.
I got her. Tony, I'll make a motion that we approve the resolution 23-32, a resolution authorizing the Sunnyside Waste Coal Facility Project Firm Power Supply Agreement transaction schedule under the master firm power supply agreement with the Utah Associated Municipal Power Systems and the ratifying the execution of the transaction scheduled by Ty Bailey, city manager.
Thank you, Eric. Motion by Eric. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Second by Jeffrey Richens. Is there any other discussion?
Well done, Ty.
Again, it's a resolution, so we'll do a roll call vote. Jeffrey Richens,
Aye.
Jeff Wardell,
Aye.
Eric Turner,
Aye.
and Dave Alexander.
Aye.
That is unanimous, Denise. All right, thank you. Moving on, once again, we're going to turn this over to Ty. Amendment to Title I, Chapter 1.15 on the consolidated fee schedule. Business license to clarify admin fees, cemetery burial fees, transfer fees for grave spaces, and clarification of utility fees. It's an ordinance as well. And those changes are in your packet. Ty, would you take a moment and walk us through this, please?
Sure. I think we've kind of gone through this a couple times this year, and that's kind of the preferred style, is just to make continual updates to the entire fee schedule. And our staff do a good job of reviewing this and trying to keep it up to date as possible. The first one, you just notice it just clarifies that it's an admin fee. So it's more clear, to the applicant what they're paying for. Where it says, oh, go ahead.
Tony, I got a question.
Go, you right ahead, Eric.
So explain to me what an admin fee is.
Just processing fee.
So do
It's like
you,
our time.
so how do I put this? I'll just say what
Go ahead.
so if I was coming in and I was doing this, would I know if it was an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, or am I kind of just at the
Yeah, it's just,
mercy of how it plays out?
it's an average. It's not necessarily how much it costs for yours. That's just what we charge to process applications.
So it's not necessarily open-ended, check them.
Right.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah, it's clear. It's just,
Okay.
this is
I
your,
just
this is
wanted
your
it
fee. And if,
clear. I mean, I'm like,
no, and if it
I'm
takes, us-
paying $50 or 200.
no, if it's, yeah, it's just 25 and then, but it's not contingent on how long your application or how complicated.
Oh, I was thinking it was like, it would go up and down depending on how complicated it
No,
was.
No, it's a
Okay.
flat fee.
Gotcha.
So some are easier than others, but we just charge 25.
Okay,
So-
fair enough.
Um, we basically assume it's less than an hour. Then we haven't done anything really with, our cemetery fees, our burial fees. So this is helping with weekends. It's clarifying, like an infant vault. I think the big change that you'll see is on a disinterment. Everything else is upping the price. It's just really costly, but disinterment is, you can see, for an adult disinterment, it goes up to 3,000. It's just really difficult. So that's one that we elected to propose. I don't know if you can see on,
What makes that difficult?
so being able to pull the whole vault and everything back out of the ground is a lot more, so you gotta dig down, you gotta dig around it. And then you gotta go down and basically put anchor bolts in the side of a vault, and hope it holds together. You gotta get a truck to lift. I don't know how much detail you want, but
That's good.
uh,
Probably yes.
but it's just a lot of work, and there's a lot of risk involved in bringing it up, making it look nice. But I guess the other point of that is if you buried, you should probably call it your final resting place. And
Really you do.
yeah,
How often do we do that?
we did one on Halloween this year. Yeah. I don't know if I should have mentioned the specific date, but if you want to know the scenario, let's just say that if one spouse dies before the other, whoever lives the longest gets the final say.
Sure.
Gotcha. That makes sense.
I have a question. What, I noticed we added a bunch of rates for child. What determines a child? Do we have
No, but that's why we went from small to infant. The vault side the vault side's pretty well standard.
and that pretty well determines,
Yeah.
okay, all right,
Yeah, and some of those are co-located on a
right,
same site. Some of them are just smaller plots.
okay.
So there's like an infant, there's some options of,
So essentially it has to do with,
but we didn't address it before. Really, I think that adds it to her. Well, one of them ups it, but the non-resident one,
so essentially it has to do with vault size
yeah, exactly.
is the criteria. Okay, I was just curious about that. If there's an age or, okay,
Yeah. And then our utility fee, oh, sorry, was there another question?
Well, with that, I've never cemetery shopped. Is that a fairly standardized fee for most cemeteries? And
There's,
I don't, is that outrageous? Is that a good deal? I guess I haven't done that shopping.
pretty reasonable. I
goodness.
think.
yeah, it's still reasonable. It's not,
Pretty reasonable.
Is that okay?
yeah, most are more, it's a heavy discount for residents.
Well, I like that.
But depending on where you're not a resident and coming from, that's just no way to compare. It's just still more focused on our actual cost
our-
and the
Our
value of,
costs, our efforts. Okay.
Having been on the council for a day or two, there was a time when, before we really had this, we did differentiate between it was just one fee, and what we were finding out is, I think we were finding we had a lot of people coming up here to be buried that had nothing to do with necessarily Morgan City. It was just a cheap place, yeah.
Be buried, okay,
And so I remember when we went to the tiered system, which made sense, so,
good, okay.
yeah.
then, of course, weekends are still more than weekdays. It's almost guaranteed that it causes overtime.
For multiple, gotcha.
Thank you, Ty.
Yeah, and then the last utility fee, it's the same fee, it just, instead of having to disconnect and reconnect, it's just, it's all on one line.
All on one line.
Yeah, so what happens is sometimes it's difficult to say, I got disconnected or reconnected. It's the same fee. Just we shut you off, we charge you, turn you on, we charge you. So someone has to go out and do that. So I think that's all of the
Any
points, unless there's other questions,
any
but
other questions or comments for Ty? Jeffrey, Jeff, Eric?
Nope.
Dave?
No.
If not, once again, I am prepared to take a motion on ordinance 23-13. Motion by Jeff Wardell,
Accept ordinance 2313, an ordinance amending Title 1, Chapter 1.15 of the Morgan City Code by amending business license to clarify admin fees, cemetery burial fees, and transfer fees for grave space, and clarification of utility fees for the consolidated fee schedule, providing for repealer, providing for servability, and providing for immediate effective date.
thank you, Jeff. Motion by Jeff Wardell. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Dave Alexander. Once again, any other discussion on that motion?
I guess I've got one more comment, I guess.
Sure.
This is the fee for both our cemeteries,
yes.
where we have equipment at one and shooting equipment back and forth to take care of the other, I guess. But it's for either cemetery.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. We
Perfect.
have some equipment at both, but it's also shared equipment between departments.
Okay.
So it's trailered pretty much wherever we need it.
Any other comments or discussion? Once again, it's a resolution, it's an ordinance, roll call vote. Jeffrey Richens,
Aye.
Jeff Wardell,
Aye.
Eric Turner,
Aye.
and Dave Alexander.
Aye.
4 ayes. That passes unanimously as well. And we're moving right along here. We are now down to the amendment to Title 10, Chapter 10.22, Section 10.22.050 F 5, Development Standards of the Morgan City Code regarding access points in the Sensitive Lands Districts Ordinance. Jake, are you still on? Is Jake? He's got a minute. He's got a minute.
While he's getting on, I'll just mention that this is Jake's request. And it was brought up to the planning commission. Denise, shouldn't there be a reference that the planning commission has forwarded this with a positive recommendation? Not that it's,
It was discussed. I recall.
yeah, and the planning commission recommended it, but typically we'll put that on the agenda.
So essentially what, there he is. Jake, do you want to discuss this for a moment?
Yeah. So, in terms of, the previous language for the sensitive lands ordinance said 20 lots. And, where you can have multiple townhome units on a single lot, that didn't provide the clarity that we needed, that for a development with more than 20 lots, such as a townhome community, or it could be, small individual homes on a single lot, which we don't really have in the city, but this would require that. So no matter the type of dwelling unit, we would have the second access point to it.
Well, the clarification is that it now is dwelling units, not necessarily lots, right?
Correct. And this is something that Matt has brought to my attention for a number of months now, and we decided just to recommend a simple fix.
Anyone have any questions for Jay?
That seems pretty straightforward. Yeah. I don't know, we need to.
I know that. I can't remember if it was the Pheasant Run subdivision where there was some discussion, and even with Pheasant Run, about having 2 points of ingress and egress, so this does have some clarification to that, so. Any other comments or discussion? Okay, well, once again, it's an ordinance 23-14. Is someone prepared to make a motion?
Tony, I'll make a motion that we pass ordinance 23-14. Sorry. An ordinance amending Title 10, Chapter 10.22, Section 10.22.5.50 F5 of the Morgan City Code regarding access points in the sensitive lands district ordinance regarding sensitive lands, providing for the repealer, providing for the severability, and providing for an effective date.
Thank you, Eric. Motion by Eric. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Second by Jeffrey Richens. Once again, is there any further discussion on this ordinance? If not, once again, I'll do a roll call vote. Dave Alexander,
Aye.
Eric Turner,
Aye.
Jeff Wardell,
Aye.
and Jeffrey Richens.
Aye.
That passes unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jake. We are now through our active agenda. We're down to city reports and business. City council. Does anyone on the city council have anything that they wish to bring before the council?
I know we've talked about it, but just compliment Gary and his retirement, and thank you for continuing to work with us. We appreciate that.
Absolutely.
I'd like to make it part of the record.
Glad to have you, Gary. You can't retire from Morgan City for at least another several years.
Yeah, when do all of our terms expire? Okay, fair enough.
Yeah, it has been a pleasure working with you over the years, so I'm glad you're staying with us, so. All right, Ty, you're up. City manager updates.
Well, hey, just
Whoops.
also want to get on the record, I don't know how many of you were out on Commercial Street, State Street at Halloween time. Holy cow.
How many, Jeffrey?
What a mess. Jeez.
I stayed away on purpose.
It was
It
nuts.
was incredible.
It was nuts.
So, thank you to, I guess, the Chamber of Commerce and
Actually, no, I
whoever,
think it's just the
the
businesses.
businesses. Wow, that was a lot of people.
I don't think it's a chamber of, is it?
No, what they do is they just advertise for chamber members.
Okay.
So if anybody wants to put a little blurb that they'll be sharing candy or
Sharing candy.
whatnot, then they.
Hot dog
They put it up
cups there, Jeffrey.
Yeah, I see what
Yeah.
somebody was giving them out.
It was the church, the
Church.
community, yeah. They do a lot of good work in the community.
Boy,
They do a lot of,
Active, so
yeah.
I thought that.
Like 1,100. 1,100.
1,200 hot dogs?
That's how much candy Denise gave out.
1,100 bags of chips. It was crazy.
You think people come up with that, do that?
Okay. Might be a little stale, but so what, right?
So like our 4th of July parade's super busy as well. And I think we're almost to the point on Halloween that we could just have the kids go down the street and all the vendors can throw candy at them like a reverse parade.
One point I want to make, it was ironic that as I walked up the street, I ran into Jeffrey. He was handing out candy for his boy. And we said at the exact same time, it was like great minds were thinking together. But I noticed it and Jeffrey noticed it, and it was over by the health center.
The health center,
There
the
was
bank.
there was two locations over there, and everything else was on the other side of the street. And Jeffrey and I both commented how kind of that was a safety, kind of a safe, not kind of, but a safety hazard.
Kids all over.
Having those kids go back and forth across State Street just to hit those two locations. And one was the health center. What was the other one?
The bank, and I don't know what Nebco was doing.
And I don't, and so I'm not sure who we would take that information to, but we both agreed that they probably need
All
to
of us.
move across the
Keep
street.
Kids on one side of State
Put every,
Street.
to put them all on that same side of the street, so they're not crossing back and forth there. So
How would you get that message to kids?
unless you went to the health center itself and the bank itself and says, could you please
Put your table and
move
hand
over
candy
on the
out.
other side of the
How
street?
would you, how would little 5-year-old know to not cross the street?
Well, if there's not
There
anybody
wouldn't-
over there
there
handing out
wouldn't be-
candy, they
Yeah, there
wouldn't
wouldn't be
go.
a booth over there. They wouldn't go over there. And there was nobody over there. Other
I
than
could
those
still
two.
picture them going over, but maybe not.
There would be nothing to go over
Well,
for.
no, they realize that and turn back, but then the next kid that turns the corner doesn't understand that and tries to do the same thing.
Well, but it was also the same situation with the Devil Slide Federal Credit Union. I mean, they,
Yeah, nonetheless, it's a safety
and
concern.
being on that board, we've already had that discussion where we says we're gonna move away from the credit union next year and go over by the
Bowling alley, yeah.
so it keeps them all on the same side of the street. So anyway, but it was ironic that Jeffrey and I noticed it both at the same time. We made the comment. So anyway, but there was a lot of kids,
It
so
was shoulder to shoulder from the
it was nuts.
McDonald's to
Oh,
courthouse.
Okay, Ty, I think you're up now.
Okay, so the updates are on the agenda. Most, I think all of them are on there, but just a couple UAMPS updates. We've applied. It's just a concept paper at this point for high wind resiliency grant. So that's part of the IIJA grant. So this is the state's allocation of the federal, I think it's in Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act money, but we're asking for 600,000 for $1 million project to put our power lines in the ground on State Street. So just the concept is just to fit the grant parameters. The concept is if we just underground, some of our power lines are not susceptible to wind. Trees and wind, yeah. So we'll see how that goes. UAMPS has about, I think we have 5 participants all joining in one application. So we would cost share. It's about $3 million that's available. And then it's competitive within Utah. So we've had our first review and they have some follow-up questions, but just to be aware.
More want to do that.
Their size. So some of them are just so big that they're like, even $1 million isn't gonna help us. Like, it's not.
Not worth their time.
Yeah, and so it's kind of interesting because once we all started, some of them, even like Lehigh's like, we'd rather just bow out and let Morgan or, you know, some of these others that's a big investment in their little systems, but to us, it's a little.
It's one street.
Yeah, well, it's one street to whoever, but we only have so many streets,
Right.
so. We just didn't want to dilute the dollars to the point where everybody got like 200,000 and nobody could actually do anything with it.
Oh, good.
So it was a good cooperative effort.
Then
Then,
it's good to see the cooperation.
yeah, and it's still not a guarantee. It's gonna be it's probably gonna be 5 years before we see anything from it. Just want to make you aware that we're pursuing it. Carbon Free Power Project, everybody, I think, saw the notice that UAMPS decided to, or mutually agreed to end the project with New Scale. It's part of the messaging there, I think, is it's just so cumbersome, like the power's needed, but it's so cumbersome to permit new sources of power. So we had a Congressman Curtis was in our meeting today at UAMPS virtually, but he's sensitive to he's on the energy task force or whatnot at the federal level, and so he has that message. He understands that, you know, he's supportive one way or the other, he said, but that's part of the cost, and then just all the other risks that we're aware of. Just before it got to be way too big of a risk. They both ended the project, so.
Were you surprised to see the decision? So I mean, when we took our exit, no one else did.
Yeah,
There may have been one other, but basically it was us getting off.
yeah, it was us getting off, but the project was the dictator, right? Like we stayed in it, gave it a fair shake, but there's just no subscription, and without
All the big ones dropped off too earlier on.
well, big for us, but not even big for the project. It was gonna take more than all of UAMPS. You know, there was gonna have to be, yeah.
Maybe we should have never got UAMPS, maybe we should have never done it to begin with, I wonder.
I don't know, because they helped develop a lot of that project, and if New Scale partners up with somebody else in the future, there's still opportunity that we
Sure.
jump in at some point, but it's not I don't know that you call it a huge loss. Where we're being very proactive, or UAMPS as a whole, being proactive and trying to figure out how to fit the new reality of power, but
What about increased costs? Did that come into play? Is that
yeah, so
a big reason why they
Yeah.
exited?
yeah. They didn't really give a ton of answers, but that's just my assessment of it. Is just the amount of financing that was subject to increased inflation. Just
Hence
that's not-
higher kilowatt hour.
yeah, hundreds of millions of dollars at a different interest rate is. I mean, it's all financed way into the future before you even have a project. So it's a heavy lift. But I was glad that it was mutual agreement instead of a fight at the end to say who owes who what.
I read 2 or 3 articles and there was mutual disappointment.
Yeah.
Perhaps, but at least there was mutual agreement
As
too.
well, yeah. Then the other thing I'm pretty excited about is within the pool project, UAMPS is creating an internal market. Basically, so for a member internal generation, they can look at market prices and right now there's really no incentive for people to overproduce power. If you overproduce power as a single entity, then you're just exposed to pool pricing and then the market after that. But what they're doing is they're saying, well, if you'll overproduce, the other UAMPS members are interested in buying power from you before we buy from the open market. So, but we would buy it at a higher rate. Right now, if you overproduce, you only get credit for whatever was in your portfolio. So you would be discounting that power heavily because based on what your costs were to produce it would just go, you'd be foregoing other power sources. It's kind of hard to explain, but this basically creates a market where there's an incentive for other people to overproduce if they're available. They would make more than they typically would, but way less than the market. And it affords the other members an opportunity to buy the power out of it's, basically distributed generation, different sources instead of out of one big plant. So it's coming together. It's going to be pretty cool.
So it would like give UAMPS members almost a right of first refusal if they'd have first dibs at it.
Yeah. Well, and the offer would be made the day before. So instead of just leaving it up to, we're only gonna, so like a internal generation, you just say, we're just gonna shave our peak. We're gonna keep all of the resources that we currently have, but we're only gonna run our generation just enough to offset the market. But if they have the capacity to over generate, they could do that and sell at a profit to them, to other members that are in need.
But cheaper than pool prices.
But way cheaper than full
Yeah,
prices.
That sounds like a good deal.
That's a big good deal.
So it's kind of a complicated scheme to figure out, but I just feel good about what they're trying to just tap the resources that we have available to us and act. And, maybe that's another comment I might have on the carbon free project is I think it's going to maintain unity amongst the members. Where, somewhere in, somewhere out, how much time is being devoted to projects that not everybody's interested in. And this will really gel the group, I feel,
Well, that could
instead of divide us.
have an overall effect of reducing costs to you members.
Yep.
In general.
Yeah.
Cheaper electricity.
Yep. And on our generator project, just for your awareness, we issued the notice to proceed. I think we looked at that contract a couple meetings ago, but they're gonna be preparing the sites for the natural gas generator. Tomorrow, Clark and I are gonna go pick up the 2 portable units. And the unit that's gonna be for this building is just on order. I can't remember how many, 20-something weeks out or what, I can't remember how long it is, but anyway, they'll be prepared. You'll notice they'll prep the site
That's a notice that goes to the vendor.
to the contractor, yeah.
Yeah.
It's gonna. They might not do the work till spring. It's not a very big project to pour a couple pads and make some connections, but I did sign that, just so you know, it's moving. Cemetery update, we bought 2 new mowers. So there's one at each cemetery. They were about 14,000 each. But they're a cemetery edition, so on the back end, they're 0 turn, but on the back end, they don't have anything that sticks out, so you don't accidentally hit headstones when the other ones, you gotta really maneuver and watch the back end as well as the front. And so the other thing is the deck follows the ground, so they don't scalp. The other ones were more stationary, so as you go over a hill,
Cutting the top off.
yeah, then they scalp the grass. The old ones would scalp the grass a lot more, so we're excited about those. They should help the cemeteries look nice. And then we just signed a contract for a new water pump. That whole project has a couple of different components, but it's about $61,000 to put a new water pump at the cemetery. So part of our watering issue before is when the water level would drop, the pump would kick off, burn up, and didn't have the variable speed, to maintain a
This is
certain
when it would
pressure.
drop in the well.
Yeah,
Okay.
well, in the tank,
In the tank.
and so this will be installed in the tank, but it basically sets us up so that if we do a new sprinkler system, this is the starting point for that. And we would have to pay for that either way, but we're also converting to culinary water instead of secondary.
Why
Just-
wouldn't the tank be gravity fed?
It is,
Why do you need a pump?
so it's set at just certain levels. So if it draws down, the tank level drops before it's.
Gravity feed.
Yeah, you mean why is the tank not gravity fed, or why like we pump up to the tank?
Right. Oh, that's what the pump is for.
No, but then where the current pump is, it draws from the tank, but if it draws too fast, then it'll kick off. That's not at the bottom of the tank. This new one will be positioned low in the tank.
Why wouldn't all water coming out of the tank be drawn by gravity? Why do you need a pump in the tank?
Pressurize it.
Yes,
Gravity will pressurize it.
well, the cemetery's at the same level or higher than the tank.
I see. So, well, that's the
So
answer.
you wouldn't
then.
have enough pressure up there.
Yes,
Gotcha.
I mean, we got enough pressure down here.
Right, because you got gravity,
Yeah, because the
right.
tank's clear up on the hill, but the cemetery's on the.
so at the cemetery, you can walk on top
All
of the
you need
tank.
the pressure in order
Okay.
to,
Gotcha.
all that's gonna do is pressurize the system.
I didn't understand the question,
Yeah.
but yeah, that's the answer. Then we finally got the snowplow truck. It's been on the budget for 2 years at least.
So we'll look for that at the next warrant report.
It was, yeah, it'll be in the next one. I just signed it.
What year is it? 52 years to get it.
Exactly. Well,
That's a good 45. 1945. Still brand new.
it's kind of like as you get older, your hip's a different age than your shoulder and the plow's fairly new. It was the last thing installed, so,
Appreciate that. That means it won't snow this winter, so that's a good thing.
yeah. Pretty nice though. It's big and it has a side blade on it,
Has a
side
wing
plow,
on it.
so it'll reduce the time needed to,
Push cars out of the way.
yeah. Yeah, instead of just putting snow in people's driveways, it'll actually repark their car. So, sorry, that's probably funny, not funny, right? The train depot remodel's going well, just an update there. We decided to finish the basement while we were at it, so they're repouring the floor and rocking the walls and then putting some shelves down there. It's gonna be storage anyway, but it'll really make it look nice. Electrical's going well, working on a sign concept. To put a sign out in front of it. Looks nice. We have a design. Just be looking at getting a sign installed for that, but the power pole that's out in front of it will be removed. So we're gonna be feeding power from the other side, so. Let's see, remodel the city, so we have a storage room back here that we're gonna get remodeled. We just cleared it out. It'll be my new office. And then Matt Fry doesn't currently have an office. He's our parks. Everybody else has an office. We looked at just doing cubicles and a couple of different things, but it looks a lot bigger than it is when it's empty. Went and measured the floor and it's about 2 feet bigger than some of the other offices, but big enough that I can have a separate table in there, little conference room. And right now I can only put 2 or 3, mostly there's only 2 chairs and then 3 it's crowded. You know, for staff meetings, personnel issues, or people that want to come and meet as a group. So Matt will take my old office and then everybody has an office, but I'm just still working off that municipal building authority fund to update our buildings. We just finished performance reviews, so that process is complete. I just really enjoy that opportunity to meet with every employee and go through their safety and personal goals and the cost saving measures and it was good. And then just so Christmas party, the December 2nd, the city's hometown Christmas, just to make sure that's on your radar. And then the December 14th is the city's staff party. So you're invited and your families are invited. So we're gonna do the bowling alley. Again, it'll be about 2 o'clock. We'll start. So, you know, we'll get started, but some of the kids that are still in school still have time to come over after school and do some bowling and eat some pizza. So just, that is my updates.
I've got one more question for him, Tony. Sure. Only because it's my backyard and I've heard from several neighbors. Riverside Park, we've removed a ton of trees. Are there more trees coming back in the springtime? Is there planting more trees?
Yeah.
They took out a ton of and they needed it. They were getting overgrown.
Yeah, so we'll be replanting some of them, but they won't necessarily be pine trees.
Okay.
Just more on that. We've contracted with NICE tree service. We don't have an arborist. And so we've contracted with them to help fertilize and prune and look at the health of our trees. We lost a lot of trees this year, but nobody really knows why. Just, you know.
Especially the trees up in the top.
Yeah,
But anyway, to recognize those things as they go, just so that they have the longevity and whatnot. But that's hopefully answers your question. But we also we're looking at kind of the fence line back there to redo a fence. And so we're gonna have to have conversations with the neighbors to figure out where property lines are and you know, what fence we put up, if it's a double fence or whatnot, but just clean up the boundary of the park right there too.
Are you looking for
Then
one fence that's the same all the way?
Yeah,
the length of the
a park fence, yeah. on our side, so.
What's a park fence?
Well, just the length of our park,
Yeah,
just
okay.
right now it's a smattering of different fences a
Right.
little bit
Some it's a knot and
and different, they jut out a little, so. Go ahead.
And I
Tom.
was gonna say, maybe because I was one that complained long and loud about this, it's, fair play is just another compliment on the cemetery. Looks to me 100% better. The park looks much better. So kudos on that. It looks,
Thanks, yeah.
I think, a lot better. Oh,
Thanks. Just today, I don't know if anybody noticed, but they cleaned up the entrance to the city. So even on the UDOT bridge that is just covered with weeds, they were there removing the weeds and they're getting after just a lot of other projects that have just been pending. Another note on the cemeteries is up here on the South Cemetery, they're putting a retaining wall on that one corner.
around that one bend.
Yep, on that one bend. And we had
Good.
engineering, so it has footings and everything to, they're using some
Don't
construction
tell anybody
block.
that's my relatives, will you? They'll think I'm playing.
Yeah. So we, anyway, yeah, just some really good updates
Yeah.
on parks and cemeteries lately, so.
Yeah, that looks much better.
Appreciate the
Thank.
feedback.
Okay, anybody have anything else? Any other updates? If not, we do need to go into a closed session, I'm told, so. we will-
Tony, after you go into the closed session, we'll have to shut this meeting down and go into a new, so, because the closed session has to be recorded, but I think it should be a separate recording.
So we want to have the motion to go into a closed session now,
Yeah,
right?
and then give me just a few minutes.
Okay, so I need a motion to go into a closed session.
that motion.
Tony, can I do a comment?
Pardon?
Could I do a comment?
No, of course you can do a comment.
I just wanted to thank you. It was a great meeting and I'll catch you later.
Happy hunting.
Yeah, it's fun.
Yeah.
Lots of walking. So good job, guys.
Okay, thanks, Mayor.
Thanks, Mayor.
Good
Thanks
time.
again, Gary. We'll see y'all.
Good night. Okay, so do we need this?
I'll make a motion to go to closed session
And I'll second that motion.
Do we need a reason for the closed session, Jeffrey?
Yeah.
for strategy session to discuss the purchase, exchange, or lease of real property. Do I need to read all of it?
What do?
In,
That's good.
Okay.
Huh? Okay.
Motion by Jeffrey, second by Eric. I guess we're gonna have any other discussion on it. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, we are now in a closed session.